Princess Liara stood on the balcony of the Crystal Palace, staring at the twin moons above her world. The wind carried the scent of silver blossoms, and the night sky shimmered like a sea of diamonds. She was the most beautiful daughter of the Varelian royal bloodline, but her beauty came with a curse. Her people believed she was perfect, her DNA flawless, a living treasure of their race. Yet, this perfection had brought her nothing but loneliness. In the history of the Varelians, every royal female was expected to bond with a genetically matched male. The bond was more than love. It was a merging of biology, a way to create the strongest offspring. But Lyra's body rejected every suitor who came before her. When they touched her hand, her body's cells sent a signal of rejection. Her skin would burn, her heart would race, and the bond would fail. Some men fainted from the shock. Others were left weak for days. No one had ever passed the test over the years. She had met warriors from her own world, scientists from distant colonies, and princes from allied empires. They came dressed in gold armor, in silk robes, and ceremonial jewels. They spoke of power, of wealth, of alliances that could shape the galaxy. But all of them left defeated. The council began to whisper that perhaps she was cursed. In her heart, Liara knew it was not her fault, but the pressure on her was heavy. The future of her people rested on her ability to continue the bloodline. Without her, the royal genetic chain would end, and the political balance of the galaxy might shatter. Every day, she wore her crown, smiled at her people, and hid the truth that she felt like a prisoner of her own body. That night, the palace was hosting a grand diplomatic ball. Leaders from many worlds had come to discuss peace treaties. Liara stood near the great staircase, her silver gown flowing like liquid starlight, her hair, black as the void, framed her delicate face. The hall was alive with music, laughter, and the sound of alien languages blending together. Suddenly, the sound of alarm sirens cut through the music. The massive crystal doors at the end of the hall burst open, and armored raiders stormed in. They were the Scarites, merciless hunters who sold rare beings to the highest bidder. Panic filled the palace. Guards rushed forward. But the Scarites were fast and brutal. Lyra's heart pounded as one of the raiders broke through the crowd and reached for her. She stumbled back, but before the Scarite could grab her, a man stepped between them. His movements were quick, almost reckless. He wore no royal crest, no polished armor, only a dark pilot's jacket. He raised his strange weapon, not Varelian, but human. In one swift motion, he fired, and the Scarite collapsed. The man turned to her, his brown eyes sharp and alive. "Move," he said, his voice low but commanding. Liara froze for a moment. Her people never took orders from outsiders, and certainly not from humans. But something in his gaze made her trust him, even for a moment. He grabbed her hand and pulled her through a side corridor. They ran through the maze of the palace, the sound of blaster fire echoing behind them. The man moved like someone who had been in danger all his life, taking turns without hesitation, finding cover at the right time. They reached a maintenance door at the far end of the palace gardens. The man stopped, pressing a control panel to open it. The door slid upward, revealing the night sky and the silhouette of a small, worn-out spacecraft beyond the trees. Liara pulled her hand away. "Who are you?" she asked. The man looked at her for a brief second. "Captain Elias Kane, Earthfleet, and right now, I'm the only one between you and a slave collar." Before she could respond, footsteps approached. Scarite voices barked orders in the distance. Elias stepped closer. "You can come with me and live, or you can stay and take your chances." His tone was steady, but there was no time for questions. Liara's mind raced. Humans were considered genetically weak, unfit to even stand in the royal court, yet here was one who had saved her life without hesitation. And when his hand touched hers, there was no burning sensation, no rejection, no pain. For the first time in her life, her body did not fight back. She stared at him, unsure if it was fear or curiosity guiding her choice. The footsteps were growing louder. The night air was filled with tension. Elias turned and started toward his ship, pausing only once to see if she would follow. Liara took a single step forward, then another. Her silver gown brushed against the grass as she walked into the shadows beside him. Behind them, the palace alarms screamed. The Skirites were closing in. The stars above seemed colder than ever, and somewhere deep inside, Liara felt the first spark of something she could not name. Something was about to change, forever. Small spacecraft roared into the night sky, breaking through the mist that hung over the palace gardens. Inside, Liara sat in the co-pilot's seat, her silver gown now smeared with dirt. Her heart was still racing from the escape. She kept glancing at the man beside her, the human who had just saved her life. Captain Elias Kane's hands moved confidently over the controls. The ship was old, patched together with parts from different worlds, yet it flew with surprising speed. Liara noticed the strange symbols etched into the dashboard. Not Varelian. Not from any allied empire she knew. "You shouldn't be here," she said quietly. Elias didn't look at her. "That makes two of us." She studied him. Humans were rarely seen in Varelian territory. They were considered too far down the genetic ladder. Their biology was weaker, their lifespan shorter. To her people, a human was nothing more than a fragile curiosity. Yet this man had fought like a seasoned warrior. His reactions had been faster than most Varelian soldiers. She knew. The ship jolted as blaster fire exploded behind them. Varelian royal patrol ships were in pursuit. Elias pulled the ship into a steep climb. The stars spinning outside the window. Liara gripped the seat. "They are my people. They won't fire on me," she said. Elias shot her a quick glance. "They're not after you anymore. They're after me. And they'll destroy this ship to get to me." Her pulse quickened. "Why?" she asked. Elias didn't answer right away. His eyes stayed locked on the radar, avoiding hers. Finally he said, "Because your council has a law. No human can enter your territory without permission. And I didn't exactly ask." Liara frowned. "That's not enough to send warships after you." Elias gave a humorless smile. "No. But stealing something from the royal armory is." Before she could respond, the ship dove sharply into a dense asteroid belt. The patrol ships hesitated, wary of the tight passages. Elias maneuvered through the spinning rocks with practiced skill. Lyra's eyes widened. She had never seen anyone fly like this. Not even the best Varelian pilots could thread through an asteroid field at such speed. When they finally emerged into open space, Elias switched the ship to autopilot. The hum of the engines filled the silence between them. Liara spoke first. "Why did you help me?" "You could have left with whatever you stole." Elias leaned back in his seat, his gaze unreadable. "Because I don't like seeing people in chains." Her breath caught slightly. The Skirites, the raiders who had attacked the palace, were known for enslaving rare beings. She had almost been one of them. Her people would have paid a fortune for her return. But not before the Skirites had paraded her as a prize. Elias stood and moved toward the back of the ship. "You need to change," he said. "That gown screams royalty and will get us both killed at the next port." He tossed her a folded piece of dark fabric. Simple travel clothes. Rough but comfortable. She hesitated. Unused to being ordered around still, she took the clothes and changed in the small cabin. When she returned, Elias was studying a holographic map. Bright points of light marked different systems. His finger rested on one in the far outer rim. "We're heading here. A station called Outpost 9. It's off the grid, no Varelian patrols." Liara stepped closer. "You're taking me into exile." Elias met her gaze. "I'm taking you away from people who want you dead." Before she could reply, the ship's console beeped sharply. A message was coming through, encrypted. Elias frowned, activating the audio. A voice spoke in the Varelian language, cold and commanding. "Princess Liara, your disappearance is a violation of royal law. Return immediately or face permanent exile. The human with you is to be executed." On sight, the message ended. The silence that followed was heavy. Liara looked at Elias. "If we return, they will kill you." He gave a short nod. "And if we don't, they'll hunt us across the galaxy." Something inside her shifted. For her entire life, she had been told humans were weak, unworthy of her world. Yet here was one willing to risk everything for her without asking for anything in return. Suddenly, the ship's sensors blared again, but this time it wasn't the Royal Patrol. A massive shadow passed over the viewport. A Scarite warship had found them. Its jagged hull glinted under the starlight, and its cannons were already charging. Elias jumped into the pilot's seat. "Hold on," he said. The ship shuddered as they accelerated, weaving between debris in deep space. Blaster fire lit up the darkness. One hit shook the cabin so hard that Liara fell forward. Her hand landed on Elias's arm. And again, nothing, no pain, no rejection. Just warmth. Her breath caught. The ship twisted sharply, diving toward the upper atmosphere of a red, barren planet. The Scarites followed, engines roaring. Elias's eyes narrowed. "They want you alive, but I'd rather crash this ship than hand you over." Liara stared at him, stunned. The human who shouldn't even be in her world was now the only person keeping her alive. And somewhere deep inside, she felt an impossible thought forming. Maybe he was the one her body had been waiting for all along. The red planet's surface blurred beneath them as Elias pushed the ship harder. The engines screamed in protest, warning lights flashing across the console. Behind them, the Scarite warship tore through the atmosphere like a predator. Chasing its prey, Liara gripped the side of her seat. Her pulse matched the rhythm of the alarm sirens. The world outside the viewport was a dizzying mix of crimson rock and burning sky. "They're locking weapons," Elias said, his voice tight but steady. His hands danced over the controls, flipping switches and rerouting power. The ship lurched upward, leaving the atmosphere in a violent burst. The stars swallowed them again, cold and endless. For a moment, there was silence except for the hum of the engines. Then, a new sound filled the cabin. A deep, vibrating tone from the ship's sensors. Liara leaned forward. "What is that?" Elias didn't look at her. "Gravity well, artificial. They're trying to trap us." On the screen ahead, a shimmering net of energy began to form in space. It pulsed with bright light, growing larger every second. Elias's jaw tightened. If that net closes, we're finished. He cut the main thrusters and switched to the auxiliary drives. The ship's nose dipped sharply, spinning through a narrow gap between two massive asteroids. Pieces of rock scraped the hull, sending metallic echoes through the cabin. Liara felt her stomach twist. "They're still following," she said, her voice low. Elias gave a short nod. "Then we make them regret it." He pulled the ship into the heart of the asteroid field. The rocks here were enormous, some the size of small moons. Their surfaces were scarred with ancient impact craters. Shafts of light broke through in rare places, casting strange shadows across the metal panels inside the cockpit. Blaster fire flashed past them, bright streaks in the darkness. Elias swerved violently, letting the asteroids block most of the shots. Lyra's eyes darted between the radar and the viewport. The Scarite ship was bigger, faster, and heavily armed, yet it was struggling to match Elias's movements. "How are you doing this?" she asked. Elias smirked faintly. "I used to fly through asteroid belts for fun." Liara stared at him, unsure if he was joking. The ship suddenly shook hard. An alarm screamed. "Direct hit aft shields at 40%, Elias announced. His hands moved faster now, sending the ship in a tight spiral. Liara could feel the pressure pulling at her chest. Then she saw it, a cluster of asteroids drifting close together, creating a twisting tunnel of rock and debris. The gap was impossibly small. No sane pilot would attempt it. Elias's eyes lit with something dangerous. "You're not," she began, but he cut her off. "Hold your breath." The ship dove straight into the tunnel. The walls of rock scraped past within meters. Sparks danced across the hull as smaller debris smashed against them. The Scarite ship hesitated before following. Its larger size made the passage deadly. Inside the tunnel, everything was chaos. The view outside spun wildly, metal groaned under the strain, and the artificial gravity flickered. Lyra's hair floated for a second before slamming back down. Her hand clutched Elias's arm without thinking. Again, no pain, no rejection, just heat. Steady and grounding, Elias didn't react to her touch. His focus was absolute, guiding the ship through sharp turns and narrow squeezes. The Scarite warship tried to keep up, but one wrong move sent it scraping hard against the rock walls. A burst of flame erupted from its side. Elias pulled them into a sudden dive, and they shot out of the tunnel into open space. Behind them, the Scarite ship emerged seconds later. Damaged but still alive, Elias exhaled slowly, persistent. He muttered. Lyra's eyes scanned the endless stretch of stars. Where now? Elias tapped the map. We head for the drift. Uncharted space. Too unstable for big ships. The drift was a place even Lyra had only heard of in stories. A region where gravity storms tore planets apart, where lost ships drifted for centuries. It was said that no one who entered ever came back the same. As they neared its edge, the space ahead began to distort. Stars bent into strange shapes, and flashes of light rippled like waves. Elias's voice was calm. Once we cross, they can't follow without tearing themselves apart. The Scarite ship was closing in fast. Its cannons began to glow, charging for a full volley. Elias pushed the engines to their limit. The hum rose to a deafening roar. Just as the Scarites fired, the ship dove into the drift. Space twisted violently. The view outside became a swirl of light and darkness. Lyra felt her breath leave her body. The sensation was unlike anything she had known, as if the universe itself was folding around them. For a long moment, there was nothing but silence. Then, the ship steadied. The stars returned, though they looked wrong, larger, sharper, and strangely distant. The Scarites were gone. Elias leaned back, breathing hard. Lyra turned to him. You risked everything for this escape. He glanced at her. You're worth more than you think. Her chest tightened, not from fear, but from something far more dangerous. In that instant, she knew the galaxy was no longer the same. Asterisk. The drift was unlike any region Lyra had ever seen. The stars here shimmered in strange colors, some shifting like liquid. Nebula clouds moved slowly, their edges curling and stretching as if alive. The space between them was filled with faint whispers, not sound, but a strange vibration in the bones. Elias kept his focus on the controls, guiding the ship through narrow currents of stable space. One wrong move could send them into a gravity storm, tearing the vessel apart. Lyra sat silently, her gaze locked on the strange lights outside. For the first time since leaving her homeworld, she felt something odd, a flutter deep in her chest. Not fear, not pain, but something else entirely. Hours passed in uneasy quiet until Elias finally set the ship down on a small, abandoned refueling station, hidden in the shadows of a dead moon. The docking clamps locked into place with a heavy clang. Elias stood and stretched his shoulders. We can rest here for a while. No patrols, no Scarites. His voice was calm, but his eyes still scanned every corner, always watching. Lyra followed him into the med bay. Her head felt heavy, her hands colder than usual. You look pale, Elias said, tilting his head. I'm fine, she replied quickly. Though her voice was weaker than she intended, the med bay lights flickered on, bathing the room in sterile white. Elias activated the station's old medical AI. A flickering hologram of a woman appeared, her voice neutral. Please state the patient's condition. Lyra hesitated before saying dizziness and something strange. She touched her stomach unconsciously. Elias frowned but said nothing. The AI guided her to lie down on the scanning bed. The machine hummed softly as beams of light passed over her body. Data filled the screen in alien symbols and human letters. Elias leaned over the console, trying to read both languages at once. Then the AI spoke. Patient is in early gestation, Estimated 2.3 weeks. The words seemed to hang in the air. Liara blinked, her mind blank. For a moment, that's impossible, she whispered. Her people's biology had never accepted another species. It was not just rare, it was forbidden by nature itself. Elias looked at her, his expression unreadable. I thought you said your body rejects everyone. It does, she replied quickly. It should have rejected you too. The AI continued speaking. Fetal genetic structure is stable. DNA sequence contains traits from both parents. Compatibility index, 96%. Liara sat up slowly, her hands trembling. Her people's scientists had spent centuries trying to reach such compatibility, even among their own kind. To hear it spoken about a hybrid child was unthinkable. Elias broke the silence. So, what does this mean for you? Liara's voice was unsteady. If my people find out, they won't see this as a miracle. They will see it as corruption. They'll come after us, Elias said simply. They'll come after the child. She corrected. The weight of her words settled over the room. This was no longer about survival. It was about protecting something that shouldn't exist. Her mind flashed with images of the High Council's cold chambers. The endless debates about genetic purity. The punishments for those who defied tradition. She had seen exiles before, but this was worse. If they took her child, it would never be allowed to leave. Elias reached for the console, saving the scan. Data to a secure chip. We keep this hidden, he said firmly. No one can know until we're safe. Liara looked at him, studying the lines of his face. He was human, the kind of being she had been taught to dismiss, to see as fragile and unworthy, yet here he was, standing between her and the galaxy's wrath without hesitation. Something warm stirred in her chest, and it frightened her almost as much as it comforted her. A sudden beeping broke the moment. Elias turned to the console, his brow furrowing. Someone just pinged the station's coordinates. Lyra's heart jumped. The Skarites? Worse, Elias said grimly. Your people, through the viewport. A faint glimmer appeared in the distance. It grew brighter, sharper, until the outline of a Varelian warship came into view. Its dark hull reflected the dead moon's pale light, moving with silent precision. Liara stepped closer to the glass, her throat tight. They will demand my return, she said. And they'll execute me for what I've done, Elias replied without hesitation. For a moment, neither of them moved. The child, their child, was now a secret too dangerous to speak aloud. If captured, it would be erased from existence. If they escaped, the entire galaxy might hunt them. Aelias's hand moved to the throttle controls, his eyes locked on the warship. This station won't hold against their weapons. We have one chance. Liara met his gaze, and for the first time, she didn't feel the need to question him. Then let's not waste it, she said. The ship's engines roared back to life. The station's docking clamps released with a violent jolt. Outside, the warship shifted position, preparing to fire. Inside, Liara pressed a hand to her stomach. She didn't know if this child was a miracle or a curse, but she knew one thing. She would not let anyone take it from her. Elias pulled the ship into a steep climb, racing toward the swirling mists of the drift. Behind them, the warship followed, its cannons glowing like the eyes of a predator. The chase had only just begun. Asterisk. The drift's strange currents bent the starlight into rippling streams. Elias's ship darted between them, engines straining behind. The Varelian warship stayed in pursuit, its sleek shape cutting through space like a blade. Each blast from its cannons lit the shadows, shaking the smaller craft. Liara sat in the co-pilot's seat, her hand unconsciously resting over her stomach. Every vibration from the engine seemed to echo inside her. She knew they couldn't run forever, even here, in uncharted space. The reach of the High Council was long. They're not giving up, Elias said, his voice steady but edged with tension. They won't, she replied. Not until they have me or the child. Her words hung between them like a storm about to break. Elias pushed the ship into a steep dive toward a cluster of massive, glowing gas clouds. The drift storms raged within them, flashes of blue lightning arcing across the mist. "It's dangerous," Liara warned. "That's the point," he answered. They plunged into the cloud, and the world outside became a swirling ocean of color. The sensors flickered with interference, static filled the comms. For a moment, it felt as if they had vanished from the galaxy itself. In the brief calm, Elias glanced at her. "You've been quiet since the medbay," he said. "I've been thinking," she replied softly. "About what?" "About how one human pilot is risking his life for something he didn't ask for." Elias's hand stayed on the controls. "I didn't ask for it," he said, "but I'm not letting it go. And I'm not letting them take you." Her chest tightened. She had heard words of loyalty before, from princes and soldiers, but none of them had meant it the way he did. The cloud began to thin, and beyond it lay a broken moon. Its surface was scarred from ancient battles, scattered across. Its orbit were the remains of destroyed ships, silent graves drifting in the dark. Elias slowed their approach. "This is where we disappear," he said. Nestled among the debris was a hidden hangar, its doors camouflaged against the moon's jagged surface. Inside, they found a small group of ships, battered but functional. Armed figures stepped forward, their faces hidden under helmets. Liara tensed, but Elias raised a hand. "They're friends," he said. One of the figures removed their helmet, revealing a woman with sharp eyes and silver hair. "Kara," Elias greeted her with a rare smile. "You picked a bad time to show up," she replied, glancing at Liara. "Who's this?" Elias hesitated only a second. "Someone the galaxy wants dead." Kara's gaze shifted to Lyra's stomach, and something in her expression changed. "Not just her," she said quietly. Elias gave a small nod. Kara's tone turned serious. "You need to understand, if word gets out about that child, it won't just be the Varelians. Every empire will want it. Every warlord will try to claim it." Liara felt the weight of the truth settle over her. The child wasn't just her problem anymore. It was a spark, one that could ignite the entire galaxy. Kara led them deeper into the base. It was carved into the moon's rock, lit by old power cells and the glow of navigation screens. Maps of the galaxy covered one wall, marked with rebel positions and patrol routes. Liara realized these weren't just outlaws. They were fighters, people living on the edge of war. As they talked, a distant rumble shook the base. An alarm blared, red lights flashing. "They found us," Kara cursed. The main screen lit up, showing the Varelian warship emerging from the gas cloud. It was not alone. 3 more patrol ships flanked it, their weapons armed. Elias grabbed Lyra's hand. "We have to move now." Kara barked orders to her crew, fighters scrambling to their ships, the base filled with the sound of engines powering up. Lyra's mind raced. If they stayed, the rebels would die for her. If they left, they might not survive the chase. She turned to Elias. "They're here because of me. I can't let them." He cut her off. "They're here because they're already at war with the people who want you dead. You're just the newest reason to fight harder, outside." The moon's surface erupted in blaster fire as the rebels launched their ships. Explosions lit the dark, casting shadows across the hangar. Elias pulled her toward their vessel. As they lifted off, Liara looked back to see Kara's fighters diving into battle, their small ships weaving between the massive Varelian craft. The comm crackled with Kara's voice. "Get to the outer rim. There's a system they won't follow you into." Elias punched the coordinates into the nav system. The stars stretched into long lines as they jumped to hyperspace. When the motion settled, the view outside was calm again. Elias leaned back, breathing hard. Liara turned to him, her voice low. "They'll never stop, will they?" He met her gaze. "No, but neither will I." Something unspoken passed between them in that moment. It wasn't just survival anymore. It was loyalty, it was defiance, and maybe, just maybe, it was love. The outer rim world of Varos was a place where the powerful came to settle disputes. Its capital was built inside a colossal crater, the city walls lined with banners from 100 alien empires. Here, the High Council could claim neutrality, though everyone knew it was an illusion. Elias's ship descended into the landing bay under heavy guard. They had been captured 2 days earlier, ambushed by a Varelian patrol posing as traitors. Now Liara and Elias walked through the marble halls of the council chambers, their hands bound in magnetic cuffs. The air was thick with the scent of incense and polished stone. Alien dignitaries lined the balconies above, whispering in dozens of languages at the far end of the chamber. The High Council sat on raised thrones. Their robes shimmered with living fabric that shifted colors as they moved. The head chancellor, a tall Varelian with eyes like molten silver, stood and spoke. Princess Liara, you are accused of abandoning your duty to your people. You are accused of consorting with an alien species. And you are accused of carrying an abomination that threatens the purity of our bloodline. Gasps echoed through the hall. The word abomination cut through Lyra's chest like a blade. Her eyes burned, but she kept her chin high. This child is not an abomination, she said clearly. It is proof that our laws are wrong. Murmurs spread through the crowd, some voices angry, others curious. The chancellor raised a hand for silence. Then we shall see, he said, turning to the guards. Bring forth the medical scan. A massive holographic display flickered to life. It showed the results from the abandoned station, the genetic match between Liara and Elias, the impossible 96% compatibility. The crowd erupted into chaos. Some called it heresy, others shouted it was a sign from the stars. Elias stepped forward, his voice cutting through the noise. You call yourselves the guardians of life, yet you would destroy a child for being different. One of the counselors sneered. We protect our kind from weakness. Elias's gaze hardened. If love and survival are weakness, then your kind is already doomed. The chancellor's voice thundered. Enough. This council will decide the fate of the child. Lyra's stomach twisted. The fate, not her fate, not Elias's. They saw the child as a thing to be judged, not a life to be protected. Suddenly, a voice called from the back of the chamber. Let them speak. The crowd turned as Kara strode forward, flanked by 2 of her rebel fighters. Her presence here was a risk. Rebels were not welcome in council territory. Kara's eyes swept the room. You sit here pretending to rule the galaxy while the galaxy burns, she said. This child could unite species you've kept apart for centuries, and you want to kill it because it scares you. Guards moved toward her, but the chancellor raised a hand. Let her speak, he said, though his eyes were sharp with suspicion. Kara turned to the council. You fear what this child means because you know it will end your control. You've told your people humans are weak, that no Varelian could ever bond with one. And now here is living proof that you lied. The hall erupted again. Some of the younger delegates looked shaken, others clung stubbornly to tradition. The chancellor leaned forward. If what you say is true, then perhaps the child should be raised here. Not with rebels, not with a human. Elias's jaw tightened. That will happen over my dead body, he said, and mine. Liara added, her voice steady. The chancellor's gaze hardened. So be it, he said. Then you will both die here today. The guards moved in, weapons drawn. But before they could act, a deafening explosion shook the chamber. The far wall crumbled, revealing the black hull of a rebel assault ship. Smoke and dust filled the air as Kara's fighters stormed in. Blasters blazing, Elias grabbed Lyra's arm, pulling her toward the breach. The counselors shouted for order, their voices lost in the chaos. Outside, the rebel ship's ramp was already lowering. Kara shouted over the noise, "Move!" As they ran, Liara glanced back at the chamber. She saw the chancellor watching her, his molten silver eyes locked on hers. There was no fear in them, only a cold promise. This isn't over. His lips formed silently. The ramp closed as the rebel ship lifted into the sky. Below, the council city grew smaller, disappearing into the crater's depths. Liara stood by the viewport, one hand over her stomach. She knew the chase was far from over, but now the entire galaxy had seen The truth. And that made them more dangerous than ever. The rebel ship streaked through the void, leaving the council world far behind. Its engines hummed with a steady rhythm, a sound that carried both relief and tension. Inside, Liara sat near the viewport, the stars passing in long silver trails. Her hand rested over her stomach, feeling the faintest movements within. The child was growing, and with it, so was the danger. Elias stood at the helm, talking quietly with Kara over the comms. The rebel leader's voice was sharp but calm. The council won't stop now. They've seen you. They've seen the proof. Every empire will know by sunrise. Elias glanced toward Liara, his voice low. Then we don't give them a sunrise they can catch us under. Kara leaned back in her chair, eyes narrowing. I can hide you for a time, but not forever. Liara rose and walked toward them, her voice steady. Then we don't hide forever. We build something new. Elias met her gaze. And when they come for it? Her lips curved in the smallest of smiles. Then we make sure they regret it. The rebels' safe haven was a lush, uncharted world deep in the shadow of a dying star. From orbit, it looked like a jewel, green forests wrapped in silver. Rivers, clouds drifting lazily across the surface. They descended through the atmosphere, the air glowing faint gold as the sunlight bent through it. When the landing struts touched the soft earth, Liara stepped outside, breathing in the scent of rain and wild blossoms. For the first time in years, she felt free. The camp was simple, shelters built from scavenged ship parts, pathways lined with glowing stones. Rebel children played between the trees, their laughter carrying in the wind. Some were human, some alien, some a mix of both. Liara watched them with a strange ache in her chest. Perhaps her child would run among them one day. Weeks passed in quiet routine. Elias worked with the rebels to strengthen defenses. Liara studied the local plants for food and medicine. At night, they would sit together near the fire, the stars bright above. Sometimes they talked, sometimes they said nothing at all, but in the silence there was understanding. One night, a scout ship returned in haste. Its pilot stumbled out, pale and breathless. They're coming, he said. The council, and not just them. The Skarites too. The air in the camp shifted. Instantly, the quiet replaced by urgency. Kara began issuing orders, her fighters moving quickly to prepare. Liara turned to Elias, her heart pounding. They found us, he nodded, his jaw tight. They'll try to take you. They'll try to take the child. She placed her hand over his. Then we make our stand here. The next days were a blur of preparation. Defensive turrets were set up along the tree line. Ships were hidden under camouflage nets. Every fighter, every scavenger, every healer took up a role. Even the children were moved deep into the caves for safety. On the eve of the coming battle, Liara and Elias stood together on the edge of the camp. The dying star cast long shadows through the forest. The air was still, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Elias glanced at her, his voice low. If this goes wrong, it won't, she interrupted, and for once he didn't argue. The next morning, the horizon lit with fire. Warships broke through the clouds, their hulls glinting with the colors of the council. Behind them, darker shapes emerged, Skarite raiders hungry for a prize. The sky filled with the thunder of engines and the flash of weapons charging. The rebels stood ready. Elias climbed into his fighter, giving Liara one last look before sealing the cockpit. She stood in the heart of the camp, a small dagger at her side, her other hand resting protectively on her stomach. This was no longer just about survival. It was about claiming the right to exist. The battle began with a roar. Blaster fire lit the sky in red and blue streaks. Ships weaved between the clouds, explosions blooming like deadly flowers on the ground. The rebels fought fiercely, forcing the enemy to fight for every step. Through the chaos, Liara felt the child move again. It was a small thing, but it filled her with a fierce certainty. No matter what happened, the child would live. And if it lived, so would the truth. Hours later, the sun broke through the smoke. The enemy ships were retreating, the rebels bloodied but standing. Elias's fighter landed beside her, its hull scorched. He stepped out. Exhausted but alive, without a word, he pulled her close. The camp was quiet again. The war was far from over. The galaxy would keep hunting them. But here, in this moment, Liara knew they had bought time. Time for the child. Time for hope. Time for a future. She looked out toward the horizon. The light of the dying star warm on her face. "They will come again," Elias said. "Yes," she replied, her eyes steady, "and when they do," she added softly, "we'll be ready." Somewhere deep in the forest, a new dawn was beginning, and for the first time, it felt like theirs.